Welcome to another Ocean Ideas Talk, brought to you by ocean lovers.
We have Demystifying Sustainable Seafood. Communications expert Alex Webb gets to the bottom of the many myths and claims surrounding sustainable seafood, such as that all big boats are bad, that imported seafood is inferior, and that some species are more sustainable than others. Alex Webb is the Senior Communications and Marketing Manager, Oceania, at the Marine Stewardship Council. Currently based in Sydney, Alex has worked with top-level fisheries scientists from around the world to lead global and regional sustainable seafood campaigns across 22 different countries. Over to you, Alex.
So our ocean covers 70% of the planet. Every second breath we take comes from the ocean, and around 80% of the world's biodiversity comes from the ocean. It also feeds billions of people around the world. But as we all know in the room, our ocean is facing a triple threat of overfishing, climate change, and pollution. And increasingly, I would say, facing the threat of ocean misinformation. We live in a world where, for some, primary source of information is the likes of Netflix and TikTok, which are not platforms or outlets that are where there's any fact-checking involved. So we know that the ocean is important, and we know that the ocean is facing lots of threats on multiple fronts. So my name is Alex, and I'm on a mission to end overfishing around the world with colleagues from the Marine Stewardship Council. And the Marine Stewardship Council is an international non-profit on a mission to end overfishing by setting the world's leading standards for sustainable fishing and seafood supply chain assurance. And so we were founded by WWF and Unilever in 1997, after the collapse of the Grand Banks cod fishery off Newfoundland in Canada. And that was a fishery where you could probably get a basket and scoop up cod so easily, but with industrial fishing, over time, that fishery collapsed and a whole industry lost their livelihoods overnight. And even now, 25 years later, that fishery is only just starting to see a rebound effect. So what we know about overfishing is it can have long-lasting impacts. So that's really why we exist. And then just today, I really wanted to share a bit of insight from my experience over the last 11 years working at the MSC around the world. There are lots of different campaigns, different messages that I would say oversimplify the problem and create quite a binary narrative of, for example, big boats are bad, or if it's imported, it's not as good, it's a bit dodgy, things like that. So I just want to urge the room to, let's not be xenophobic about our fish, let's not be sizeist. And so I just wanted to dive in then on, okay, so overfishing, we understand that that's a global threat. It's a major challenge. It threatens ocean wildlife, livelihoods, and communities. And effectively, it means that when too many fish are caught and there are not enough adults in a population to breed and have babies, then there's an overfishing situation. So in terms of what is a fishery is an area of the ocean where a collection of boats go and they target a specific species. There are a few different definitions of a fishery, but to just keep it simple, it can be defined as a body of water where boats go and they have a target species. So you might have a New Zealand hoki fishery, for example. So one of the things that I hear sometimes is, well, surely there's no such thing as sustainable fishing. And so what I would say is that as an organization, we've been working to transform the seafood market to a sustainable basis for over 25 years. Our program is aligned to the United Nations, and we set our standards based on best practice marine science. So at the very beginning, many scientists came together to write the MSC standard. It's a very large textbook, but essentially it has three key principles. So the first is that a fishery doesn't take too many fish of the target species. So if you're fishing for tuna, you don't take too many tuna so that the population is healthy. The second is that the marine ecosystem is intact and that the impacts to that ecosystem are minimized. So that would be, for example, trying to get bycatch, which is unwanted catch, as close as possible to zero. And then the third is that there is effective management, training, and compliance with all regulation in place. And so to get certified, a fishery opens up the bonnet of their operations, lets everybody have a look inside, and it's a quite involved 12 to 18-month process where a team of independent scientists will look at the fishery to our standard, and there are 28 key performance indicators, and they have to score that fishery at 80% across all of those three principles for it to be certified. Once a fishery is certified by an independent third-party auditor, they are then subject to annual surveillance audit. So it's not a case of a set and forget. Fisheries are rigorously assessed independently. Sometimes they have conditions attached to their certificate, which means that they need to improve to both achieve and then maintain the MSC standard. And we've recorded over 2,000 improvements in fisheries globally since we set up shop. So that was the first thing. The second is I hear, well, there's certain fishing methods are better than other fishing methods. And inherently that might be the case if you're just going out and, you know, with a pole and line versus a big trawler. But what I would say is it's not necessarily the case. Our standard, it looks holistically and is outcome-based using science, using stock assessments and using adaptive management and harvest strategy rules plans as well. And so no matter what the method or the size of the boat, what matters really is, are you leaving enough fish in that population to maintain that population? Are you minimizing the ecosystem impact? And is a good and effective management in place? So to give a kind of an imaginary example, you could have 100 cute little wooden boats going out into the Mediterranean Sea, all targeting the same part of the water, catching fish, and you could have an overfishing situation. Meanwhile, you could have what is dubbed a super trawler coming in, this foreign flagged vessel, how dare they, they're hoovering everything up. But you could have a big vessel where half of that vessel is a floating factory where they're doing all of the processing on board rather than going back and forth to land. The other half is the normal size of a normal trawl boat. But so long as they are complying with our standard, then that can be a sustainable fishery. So what I would say is it's not necessarily the case that the fishing method or the size of the boat matters so much. The second that I hear is that there are certain species of fish that are more sustainable than others. And I think the United Nations put it quite well in their State of Fisheries and Agricultural report, which comes out every 2 years, and the next one comes out this June. And in that, they say there is no such thing as a sustainable species of fish, only sustainable populations of fish. So you could have hoki in that part of the ocean that's overfished and hoki over there that isn't overfished. And so this is where the MSC as a tool is used to assess a fishery with science and with lots of checks and audits at that population level. So yeah, that's another one that I get. The other kind of question or statement that I hear sometimes is, well, shouldn't we just stop fishing altogether? And that would save the ocean and what have you. So what I would say is that even if it were possible to install a global dictator that tells everyone they can't fish, and even if it were possible to police the vast ocean, including the high seas, what we would be probably doing, a bit like whack-a-mole, is just creating problems elsewhere. So we'd be shifting that protein demand out of the sea onto land. And already, according to the UN FAO, half of our ice-free land is dedicated to agriculture already. So that would mean more deforestation, more carbon emissions, more pesticides, chemicals, water usage, etc. Not to mention that there are many, many people in the world whose livelihoods and primary source of protein relies on fish and fishing. So whilst we can all make our own conscious choices where we have that privilege, saying we'll just stop fishing isn't really a practical solution. And the other point to make about that is the United Nations has also recognized that with a growing world population, that by 2050 we'll have close to 10 billion people, considering that only in 1960 there was about 3 billion people. We need to feed a growing world population, and the ocean covers 70% of our planet, but only accounts for 5% of our food at the moment. So the United Nations sees a real big opportunity for what they call the blue foods revolution. And blue foods are aquatic foods, foods that we get from the ocean, such as fish, shellfish, algae, things like seaweed as well. So you can have a plant-based seafood diet. And these foods are often highly nutritious, nutrient-dense foods that often have nutrients like omega-3s and 6s that are hard to find or absent in other food sources. So in terms of meeting malnutrition and feeding a growing world population, there is a big role for food. So my message would be that no matter what the food system, whether it's on land or in the sea, all food systems should be responsibly and sustainably managed. And then so I guess the next question is, well, how do I know that my seafood is sustainable? We've all been to a restaurant that says all of our fish is locally and sustainably caught. And I think as consumers, we see through those self-made claims. And I'll just give one example, buying tuna in the supermarket. So it is very easy at a glance to go, that's John West, that's Serena, that's in olive oil, that's in sweet chili flavor, that's $1, that's $2. But try comparing environmental claims. I counted at least 11, fad-free, pole and line, dolphin safe, sustainably caught, sustainably fished, responsibly caught, responsibly fished, the MSC logo. The vast majority of those claims out there are self-made claims by the brand or retailer. And so what I would say is, if you're looking for assurance, look for a credible claim, such as the MSC, but also FSC on paper and wood, fair trade. These are systems that are independent, globally evaluated, aligned with the United Nations. They have traceability systems in place as well to verify that that fish came from where it said it was. And they are backed by science and evidence and things like that. So I think I'll leave it at there. Thank you very much.
Thanks for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Ocean Ideas. Please make sure to share it with your networks and help us in our mission to turn ripples of action into waves of change for our blue planet.